This is a last discussion or dialogue. And before we ask questions, may I say something? We have talked about great many things related to our personal life, a life which is common to all humanity. With all the problems, the confusion, the misery, the conflict, violence, and many of the things we have talked about. And I'm afraid I hope it will not be merely a verbal description, but each one of us will face the actuality of our daily life and find out for ourselves if these teachings have any direct relationship in our life. Otherwise, it will be such a waste of your energy and time and money to come and sit here on a damp day. And if I may suggest, one should take these teachings as a whole, not take bits of it what you like and reject the others. It is a total package, if I may use the word, modern word. And considering what is happening in the world, politically, and all the appalling things that are going on, unless one radically, as a human being, changes fundamentally, we will not be able to help humanity. And it's very important, seems to me, that we should not follow anybody, join any group, belong to any sect, but be concerned with the whole of mankind, the global problems of life. And to understand that, these enormous complex problems, one has to be, as we said, a light to oneself. And this light cannot be found through another. Whatever they may say, however popular they are, whatever circus they put, one has to be free from all the authority, fear, and so on. And what is important is the first step is the last step. I hope you understand that. The first step that one takes is really the last step. Now we can ask questions. Without any system. Could we discuss or talk about together the question of awareness without following any particular system or practice? Go into the question of awareness. Yes, sir.
In understanding the problem, in understanding greed, seeing totally greed or any particular problem, there is a sense of deep relief. Now, how can we sustain the drive without transforming it into a practice? How can discovery not prevent further discovery and really make a
Yeah.
radical revolution?
How is one, if one discovers something, not make into a memory, into a knowledge, and so make it into a routine, and so lose the energy of that first discovery, and to maintain that all the time? That's the question.
So, can you go into what prevents this first discovery to take place? On the spot, observation now. What prevents that?
What prevents us from observing the fact and going beyond it?
And is that also what leads to carelessness, laziness? Not
Yes, is that part of laziness, indolence, and weight of tradition?
not part of that. Is it the same root? Non-observation on the spot. Is it the same root than carelessness, laziness?
The incapacity to observe what is actually going on now has is its root laziness? C'est ça.
No.
Bien. Dites en français souvent.
Est-ce que la même chose qui induit à ne pas pouvoir observer dans l'instant amène aussi la paresse, à ne pas être vraiment concerné, à moitié intéressé, non?
Half,
Pas l'un qui vient dans l'autre, mais la base, même pour les deux. Et est-ce que ce n'est pas un manque d'énergie?
could we make it much simpler? Is it lack of energy on our part to observe immediately and act on that observation? Is it lack of energy, laziness? Yeah.
Can we talk about love and
Huh?
meditation?
Can we talk about love and so on? And
Je voudrais vous poser une question. Je parle français.
comment?
Je parle français, c'est plus facile. Je sais que c'est la dernière discussion et je ne voudrais pas vous faire de peine en posant mes questions. Mais je vais vous demander si il est possible d'avoir une pratique quelconque,
Une
soit une pratique de yoga, de bouddhisme, de soufisme, sans être conditionné parce que la pratique divise, fractionne. Est-ce que c'est possible? Est-ce que c'est totalement impossible?
Alors, quelle est la question?
Est-ce que c'est possible d'effectuer une pratique n'importe quelle pratique sans être conditionné par cette pratique?
Is it possible to have a technique without being conditioned by the technique? C'est ça.
Do we have to be alone to be free? Can there not be freedom in relationship, human relationship?
Would you repeat it again louder, sir?
Do we alone to be free? Can there be freedom in human relationship?
Do you have to be alone to be free? And in that freedom, what is relationship with another human being?
Cannot there be freedom in relationship?
Cannot there be freedom in relationship? In that relationship. Now,
Not in that relationship, in human relationship.
can there be freedom in human relationship?
Could you talk about creative relationship at all? What makes a relationship creative?
What makes relationship creative?
Since many, many years, you talk about awareness,
Is there any relationship between the language and awareness?
What is the relationship between the word awareness and the actuality of it? That's enough. Yes, sir, please. Make it brief, sir, otherwise.
We agree there is no division between conscious and unconscious. And the same, there is no division between what is provenant and what is improvenant. And I am afraid everybody here, almost everybody, is accepting what you said. I am not denying the value of your thoughts, not at all. But I do not accept this, sir. You are mistaken. When you say to myself, as you said 2 days ago, to myself, everything is impermanent, it's not true, sir. We have both permanency and impermanency in the human being. It's obvious, sir. Second thing is, die is the end of what is permanent. Is there death? It's because there is something permanent. And at the same time, impermanency cannot have any end. It's obvious.
Oh, I see, I understand.
Other thing, you assume that memory is a material process. It's not only a material process. So when somebody speaks a language he never learned, is it material memory? Is it in the brain cells?
You are putting so.
A third thing in last thing.
Sir, you,
Is the last thing, because after
in one question, you are putting so many things, sir.
no, I am answering. Now I am answering. You said 4 days ago, I cannot answer this question. I do not know enough children. I say to you, if there is no division between conscious and unconscious, if you can see the totality of consciousness, then you can answer this question. Now, if you want, I will answer this question.
Sir, I think we are misunderstanding each other. I'm sorry, please sit down, sir, I'll have to answer this. So which question shall we discuss? You have had several questions. Please talk about love. Go into it much more deeply. What is, what sustains, what is the nature of energy that sustains constant discovery, constant moving?
And what prevents it?
Yeah, what, and you asked your question, sir. No, behind.
What prevents the
Yes, what prevents observation and action? And freedom is aloneness implies freedom. And can there be in relationship freedom? Now, which shall we talk about?
Love and compassion.
Huh?
About love and compassion.
Love and compassionate.
And the danger and possibilities of the language.
Yes, that is the danger of words and being attached to words and not see the reality behind the word.
And on the other way, through your words, we have a possibility to come to awareness. On the other hand,
Through
there's
words,
also a
one,
possibility.
through words one can come into awareness. And also there was a question, please go into much more in detail what it means to be aware without a technique. Now, which shall we discuss?
Start with the words and come to awareness.
Do we want to go into this question of word, awareness, and include all the other questions which have been put to us? What is the function of a word? Word, if we know English or French or Italian, whatever it is, we use a word to communicate, to point out. When we say door, we mean a particular door, to point it out. And words have made us, words have made the mind accept and build a prison round itself. That is, we are prisoners of words, right? You dislike certain words and like certain words. Words condemn or helpful, and so on. So, what is the function of a series of words or a sentence? Obviously, to communicate. Right? That's simple enough. And do words, is there a thought without a word? If there is no word, is there a thinking? Or the words help to think? You're following? Or is thinking related to words? If there were no words, would there be thinking? Is there a thinking without a word, without word? Word being symbol, image, picture, all that. So is thinking part of the structure of words? I want to tell you something. Can that be communicated without word? And it can be communicated without the word if we are both at the same level, at the same intensity, with the same interest. Then there is a communion, which is non-verbal. We understand it instantly by a gesture, which is not a word. So, part of thought is the verbalization to communicate what one thinks, right? I think about something and I want to communicate it to you. Either we are both telepathically in communication, which is dangerous, misleading, unless we are both at the same level with the same interest, with the same energy. So there is a non-verbal communication, right? A gesture, a look, and a verbal communication. But both are involved in thinking, right? I think something, I may not put it into words, but I make a gesture. And that gesture conveys a great deal, or a look. So words become important only for communication. And if we both understand the meaning of the word, then communication is fairly simple. But if I spoke in Russian and you didn't understand Russian, then we can't communicate. Now, move from there. So thought is part of verbalization. That is thinking. The whole process of thinking, are words necessary, to make it very simple, are words necessary to think? You understand my question? Or is there a thinking without words? Is this all becoming too intellectual? So, we must go further into it. That is there a thinking without image, symbol, word? And if there is no symbol, word, image, what is then thinking? There may be no thinking, or a different form of thinking. We won't go into that because that leads somewhere else. And what relationship has the word to actuality? The actuality of a word like the tent is not the tent. The word is not the thing. That's simple, anybody. But for us, the word is the thing. And we identify the word with the thing. We don't separate the word from the thing. That's part of awareness. You get it? To separate the word from the thing. The tent is not the actual tent, the word. The word tent is not the actuality. But for most of us, when we use the word tent, the imagination is already, you see the tent. So there is no separation. So part of awareness is to separate the word from the thing. I wonder, is this clear? So that makes a tremendous difference. Because I'm going to show you something in a minute. Just hold on a minute. The word fear is different from the actuality, right? The feeling of it. So we have to find out if the word creates the fear or the feeling of fear independent of the word. That's part of awareness. You understand? To separate the word from the actual. Then, if the word is different from fear, the word fear is different from the actual, then what is the actual without the word? That's part of awareness. Are you following all this? Is this too complex? So, please, I'll going to repeat it again. Is the word fear the actual? And does the actual exist without the word? If it exists without the word, is it fear? That's part of awareness. You understand? So if it is independent of the word, then what is it? Which we call fear. If that feeling is independent of that word, what is it? It is just a sensation. Right? There's nothing wrong with sensation. I wonder if you care. So, all that is part of awareness, to separate the word from the actual. This is, if you understand, to do this all the time. The word wife is not the actual. But the word wife instantly is identified with the actual. To separate the word from the actual, then there is quite a different process of observation, awareness. You understand? Are we getting somewhere? So, awareness is not the word. The word awareness is not the fact. And to be aware, does it need a technique? That was one of the questions. Obviously not. Because if you practice awareness, just a mechanical process of verbalization and not separate the word from the actual. You can do that now as we are sitting, right? So, the whole process, the whole significance of awareness, part of it is to separate the word from the thing. Because the word Smith, Mr. Smith, is not Mr. Smith. But if I look at him without the name, he's quite a different entity. So this is a tremendous process of awareness, which needs no practice, no technique. I can instantly see the truth of it. Then in awareness, is there choice? You understand my question? I am aware of you, the speaker is aware of all of you sitting there with different color shirts and blouses, whatever it is. To observe or to be aware without choice observe the colors without saying I like or don't like, this is good, this, just to observe. Right? So, to be aware implies the separation of the word from the fact, and awareness implies in which there is no choice whatsoever. And this awareness is not concentration. Is it? Concentration implies exclusion. Focusing one's desire on a particular thing, to concentrate, to focus one's observation on a particular thing, excluding other things, right? So concentration implies building a wall around yourself in order to exclude and concentrate. Right? Now, what is the relationship of awareness to concentration and attention? This is all, you follow? We are moving further into our attention. So, when there is an awareness, is there a concentration? Am I putting the question? Concentration, we said, is focusing one's desire, one's wish, one's, I won't use the word attention, on a particular thing. And so exclude anything that interferes with that concentration. Right? Awareness is not concentration. And is attention concentration? It is not. Where there is attention, there is no center from which to attend. Whereas in concentration, there is a center and therefore exclusion. I wonder if you... So we have talked about it enough. So to be aware implies the separation of the world from the fact. And in that awareness, there is no choice, but only observation. You can see this happening in daily life if you observe it. When you are interested in something very much, you observe without any word. And attention is that. Attention implies no center and therefore no border. Therefore, attention is tremendous, vast. Now, the other question is, what was it? Freedom. Does freedom imply aloneness? Right? That was the question he was asked. The meaning of the word alone means all one. See what the dictionary meaning of that word means all made into one, all one. Now, how can there be freedom if there is self-centered activity which prevents aloneness, right? I wonder if I am concerned everlastingly about myself, my problems, my worries, my wife, my cooking business, worried, concerned all about that, occupied. If my mind is occupied with many things, which is self-centered, there cannot be aloneness, can there be? So, freedom implies, freedom is non-occupied mind. I wonder, a mind which is occupied, doesn't matter with what? God, with worries, with money, with sex, with pleasure, occupied. Which most of us are, with something or other we are occupied. As long as there is this occupation with something, there cannot be freedom. Obviously. And when there is that freedom, the questioner asks, what is relationship then? Isn't it, sir? What is then relationship in that freedom, if you have such a freedom? First, have that freedom and find out. But without having that freedom, we are asking what is the relationship? I'm not trying to belittle it. But the fact is, our minds are occupied with chattering, with vanity, arrogance, all kinds of things. Self-pity, and so on. Can that mind be free of all that? And when it is free, isn't it alone? Because it's something totally different from the other, whose mind is occupied. I wonder if you see that. Right? So, if a human being is free from this tremendous occupation that's going on, then what is his relationship? Can a human being find that out? To find that out, he must unburden himself of all the content of occupations, the content of one's consciousness, which then is freedom. Then what takes place? You are free and another is not. You, as a human being, may be free from all worries and all occupation, and the other is not. Then what is your relationship between the two? What is the responsibility of the man who is free and the other who is not? Now, he wanted to talk about love. What place has freedom, which is a man who is not occupied, burdened with tremendous occupation problems and all the rest of it? What is his relationship with another who is not free? Is there in that relationship love? Or it is only then there is love? I'm trying to... Ho capito qualche cosa? Now look, what do we mean by the word love? Be careful to separate the word from the thing. What is that thing when you separate the word, the feeling? You love another. What is it that you love? Please, you love another, don't you? Your wife, your husband, your girl, your boy, whatever you call it. You love. What does that word mean to you when you use that word? Has love a motive? No, please don't shake your head. For us it has. Because you give another sex, or give him comfort, or cook his meal, or depend on him, possess him, dominate him, push him around, you follow her around. Possess, attachment, all that's implied in that word. Jealousy, anger, hatred, a sense of anxiety, fear, because you may lose that person. All that arises, and that we call love. Huh? Right? We are not being cynical. We are just looking at facts. Because
Before all that starts, is there one moment where there's something else, like total attention? It degenerates after.
we come to that, and so we'll come back to that. If to find out, no, to discover what it means to love, mustn't one be free of all that? Free of attachment. Let's take that for the moment. What do you, when one is attached, what are you attached to? Suppose one is attached to a table, what is that attachment? What does that attachment imply? Pleasure, sense of possession, and the utility of it, and the feeling that is a marvelous table, I must hold it, and so on, so on. So when a human being is attached to another, what is going on? One is attached to you. What is this feeling of the other who is attached to you? In that attachment, there is pride of possession, a sense of domination, fear of losing it, losing that person, therefore jealousy, and therefore greater attachment, greater possessiveness, right? And jealousy, anxiety, all that comes out. Now, if there is no attachment, does it mean no love, no responsibility? You understand my question? So, as for most of us, love means this terrible conflict between human beings. And so relationship becomes a perpetual anxiety. You know all this, don't you? I mean, I don't have to. And that we call love. And to escape from this terrible strain of what we call love, we have all kinds of entertainments. The television entertainment, forgive me if I use the word religious entertainment. Marvelous. We quarrel and go off to church or temple and come back and begin again. So all this is going on all the time. So can man or woman be free of all this? Or is that impossible? If it is not possible, then our life perpetually is a state of anxiety. And from that, all kinds of neurotic attitudes, beliefs, actions take place. Now, is it possible to be free of attachment, which implies a great deal? Is it possible for a human being to be free of attachment and yet feel responsible? Now, to be free of attachment doesn't mean its opposite, detachment. You follow? This is very important to understand this. When we are attached, we know the pain of attachment, the anxiety of it, and we say, well, for God's sake, I must detach myself from all this horror. So the battle of detachment begins, a conflict. Whereas if you observe or aware of the fact and the word attachment, and the freedom from that word, which is the feeling of feeling. You follow? Then to observe that feeling without any judgment, to observe it. Then you will see out of that total observation, there is quite a different movement taking place, which is neither attachment or detachment. You understand this? I wonder, are you doing it as we're talking, or you just listen to a lot of words? You know you're attached, aren't you? To a house, or doesn't matter, something or other. To a belief, to a prejudice, to a conclusion, to a person, to some ideal, tremendously attached. Attachment gives great security, which is an illusion, right? It is an illusion to be attached to something, because that something may go away, it may not be. So what you are attached to is the image you have built about that. I wonder. So can you be free of this attachment, so that there is a responsibility which is not a duty? Then what is love when there is no attachment? You understand my question? Look, if you are attached to a nationality, you worship isolation of nationality, which is a form of glorified tribalism. You are attached to it. What does that do? It breaks it up, doesn't it? I wonder if you see. I'm attached to my nationality as a Hindu tremendously, and you're attached to your Germany, France, or Italy, or nationality, England. We are separate. And the wars and all the complexity of all that goes on. Now, if there is no attachment, and you have no attachment, what takes place? Is that love? I wonder if you're getting... Are we understanding each other a little bit? So, attachment separates. Right? I am attached to my belief and you are attached to your belief. Therefore there's separation. Just see the consequences of it, the implications of it, which we can't go into now. There's too much. So, where there is attachment, there is separation, therefore there is conflict. Where there is conflict, there cannot possibly be love. And what is the relationship of man and a woman, or man and whatever it is? What is his relationship to another when there is freedom? You understand? Freedom from attachment, all the implications of it. Is that the beginning? I'm just using the word beginning, don't jump on it. Is that the beginning of compassion? You understand? When there is no nationality and there is no attachment to any belief whatsoever, to any conclusion, to any ideal, then that human being is a free human being. And his relationship with another is out of freedom, isn't it? Out of love, out of compassion. I wonder if you're getting all this. So, what next? See, all this is, isn't it, a part of awareness. Now, must you analyze, as we have done, analyze what attachment means, the implications of attachment, and so on, or can you observe the totality of it instantly and then analyze, not the other way around? I wonder if you deduce and you follow? We are used to analysis. Part of our education is to analyze things. And so we spend a lot of time on that. So we are proposing something quite different, to observe and then see the totality and then analyze. Then it becomes very simple. But whereas if we analyze and try to reach the totality, you may go wrong, which we generally do. But to observe the totality of something, which means no direction, as we went into it yesterday, then analysis either becomes important or unimportant. You can analyze or not analyze. Now, I'd like to go into something else from this, which is there something sacred in life which is part of all this? Is there something sacred in your life? Holy. Remove the word, separate the word, the image, the symbol, you understand? Which is very dangerous, you understand? And when you do that and ask yourself, is there anything really sacred in my life, in your life? Or is everything so superficial, everything so put together by thought? And thought is not sacred. Is it? Huh? Do you think thought is sacred? And the things that thought has put together is sacred? And yet we have been conditioned to that. As a Hindu, as a Buddhist, a Christian, we are conditioned to worship, adore, or whatever one does, pray to things that thought has put together. And that we call sacred. I wonder if we are meeting each other. So one has to find out, because if you do not find out if there is something really sacred which is not put together by thought, life becomes more and more superficial, more and more mechanical, and utterly meaningless at the end of one's life. I wonder if you realize this, if one realizes this. You know, we are so attached to thinking and the whole process of thinking, and worship the things that thought has put together. Thought, whether through the mind as an image, as a symbol, or through the hand, a sculpture, a symbol. The image made by the hand or by the mind is the process of thought. And thought, we said, is memory, experience, knowledge, which is past. And the past becomes the tradition. And the tradition becomes the most sacred thing. So are we worshipping the tradition, or is there something which has nothing to do with thought and tradition, with rituals and all the circus that goes on? So one has to find out. How do you find out? Not the method. Sorry, when I use the word how, I'm not using it as a method. Then let me use a different word. Is there something sacred in life? There is the whole block of humanity which says there is absolutely nothing. You are the result of environment, and change the environment, then you will never talk about anything sacred. Then you will be a mechanical, happy individual. The whole block, the communist world, the tyrannical world, and all the rest of it. So, we are asking, if one is very, very serious about this matter, and one has to be really profoundly serious, whether you belong to one that says, please, nothing but matter. Matter being thought process. That is materialism, in its deep sense of that word. And the other calls itself religious, which is actually material. I wonder if you see that. Because that is also based on thought. So, if you belong to neither, then you have to find out. You don't assert anything. Then you begin to inquire. Now, what does it mean to inquire into oneself so as to find out if there is anything deeply sacred, holy in one's life? In life, not in one's life, in living. Is there something marvelously, supreme, sacred, or there is nothing at all? Are you interested in all this? Because we are becoming more and more materialistic. You may go to churches, temples, mosques, but it is all, you follow? Structure of thought, put together by very clever, cunning thought. Because Thought wants security. And therefore it finds security in those things which it has created. And what it has created, it says, is sacred. The gods, the whole business of it. So can one separate? Can one be free of the movement of thought and what it has created as sacred, put that aside, and also not say everything is completely materialistic? You follow? So when you are in that position, neither this nor that, then what is a mind to do to find out? You understand my question? If you are very serious, and this demands that one must be profoundly serious, otherwise you'll play with, it becomes a game. It leads to illusion. So, how will you find, what will happen? May I go into it? Will you? Not, please share it, for God's sake, share it. Otherwise it becomes another messy world, sentimental nonsense. It becomes necessary to have a very quiet mind, isn't it? Because it's only in freedom you can find out. Right? There must be freedom to look. But if you say, well, I like my belief and stick to that, you're not free. Or to say everything is materialistic, which is a movement of thought, then also you're not free. Right? So there must be freedom from the imposition of civilizations, personal desires, personal hopes, and then observe. And you can only observe when the mind is completely still. If there is no stillness in the mind, movement takes place. Right? Movement being time, thought. So it is absolutely necessary to be free to observe, free from one's prejudices, from one's longing, from one's fears, all that which we have talked about endlessly during these 7 talks and 4 discussions. Can the mind be completely without movement? You understand my question? Because if there is movement, there is distortion. So can the mind be completely still? And one finds it terribly difficult, because thought comes in immediately. So one says, I must control thought. The controller is the controlled. We've been through all that, I won't go into it. When you see that the thinker is the thought, the controller is the controlled, the observer is the observed, then there is no movement. You understand? I wonder if you see this. When one realizes anger is part of the observer who says, I'm angry. So the anger and the observer are the same. That's clear, that's simple. In the same way, the thinker who wants to control thought is still thought. When one realizes that, movement of thought stops. I wonder if you see that. So when there is no movement of any kind in the mind, then naturally the mind is still. Without effort, without compulsion, without will, without all that, it is naturally still. Not cultivated stillness, because which then is mechanical, which is not stillness, which is just an illusion of stillness. So there is freedom. Freedom implies all that we have talked about, and in that freedom there is silence, which means no movement. Then you can observe. Then there is an observer. Then there is only observation, not the observer observing. You get that? So there is only observation out of total silence. Complete stillness of mind. Then you find out. Then what takes place? You understand? I can go further into it, but you won't. Then it becomes a theory. You follow? Then it becomes something you say, but I'll argue about that. We can argue and show that I'm wrong or right or this or that. But if you have gone that far, which is freedom from one's conditioning, and therefore no movement and complete silence, quietness, which is what? Then there is the operation of intelligence in there. I wonder if you get it. Look, I'll show you. We said attachment implies great pain, anxiety, fear, and therefore deepening of possession. Seeing that, to see that is part of intelligence, isn't it? Huh? Is this clear? Are we to see the nature of attachment and all its implication, to have an insight into it, is intelligence. Right? Not the cunning intelligence of thought. I'm not talking of that intelligence. The intelligence which is, except how true that is. So it is this intelligence that's now in operation. You understand what I'm talking? I wonder if you follow what I'm saying.
Sir, I'm afraid this is already beginning to be theoretical.
Theoretical, I know. No. If you see it, listen, sir, if you see attachment, right, all the implications of attachment, and see the danger of attachment, the perception is intelligence.
Yes.
Wait, that's all.
That doesn't give a still mind.
No, I'm relating it. I'm going to relate. You will see it in a minute. Give it.
I have listened to you. To have a still mind is that the observer is the observed, and so on. Well, what prevents that to take place?
What?
To live. The fact that the observer
Because why doesn't it take, why doesn't one realize that the observer is the observed? Why doesn't one realize it? Part of our tradition is that the observer is different from the observed, right? That's part of our tradition, part of our education, part of our whole social, religious structure, that the observer is totally different from the observed. Now, but can you see the observer is the observed? Do you realize it? Not only now, for the moment, because I'm pushing into a corner, but actually do you realize it? That there is no thinking, that there is no thinker without thought. So the thinker is the thought. Is that terribly difficult to see?
È molto difficile vederlo per noi.
Molto difficile. It's very difficult to see that for us. But it's,
Are you speaking of self-observation?
beg your pardon?
Are you speaking of self-observation? Or are you...
No, we've gone beyond that. Now, we raised a question, madam, which is, do we actually realize that the observer is the observed? Or are you accepting it as an idea? Then the idea becomes important, and then you will ask, how is that idea to be carried out? Then we are lost then. So, now please, just try this. Listen to what is being said. Listen. Don't translate it or refute it or argue with it. Just listen. It may be wrong, but listen. The speaker says, the observer is the past. The observed is the present. Right? The observer meets the present with the eyes and understanding of the past. Therefore, there is no meeting of the present. That's simple enough, right? Huh? No, please, it's not a question. I'm trying to explain something. Please listen quietly. We said the observer is the past, right? And our life is based on the past. Because we remember, we have got all our knowledge, all our experience is stored as the past. Right? That background, that conditioning meets the present. And translates what it meets in terms of the past. So the observer maintains separation. Right? But if there is no observer, there is only the present. Right? Of course, obviously. So, the thinker thinks he is separate from thought, right? But is there a thinker without thinking? So the thinker is the thought. And that's simple. Now, do you realize that?
If I'm not the one who thinks, then who am I?
You are the thought. You are thought. You are thought because you are the form, the name, and all the psychological build-up of thought. My belief, my anxiety, my pain, the whole movement of thought. This is simple, sir. We've been through this 100 times. So, do you actually realize that the observer is the observed? Please, just a minute. When you see a tree or a car, the observer is not the car. I hope not. Or the tree. We are not talking of that. We are talking psychologically, inwardly. The observer separates himself, and so he says, I am different from the observed. But they are essentially one. Anger is not separate from the person who says, I am angry. Anger is the person, is the psyche, and so on, gone into this. So do you see this fact that the observer is the observed? If you don't see it, conflict then will continue between the observer and the observed. Anger and the entity who says, I am different from anger. Then he controls it, suppresses it, tries to change it, the whole business you go through. There's a wastage of energy. There is no wastage of energy, and therefore no conflict, when the observer is the observed. That's simple. What is the difficulty? I don't quite see.
Lei non vede qual è, siccome molti di noi questa cosa la trovano bella ma non la capiscono, lei non vede qual è, perché è così difficile per noi vedere una cosa che lei dice?
Why don't you see for us it's so difficult? Because it's fairly simple, isn't it, for most people? Because they are so traditionally bound. The simple fact, you are bound to that, to this separation. You won't let go and say, well, just find out.
I think it's important to notice that there are moments when as you talk about intelligence coming about, I think what happens, I see what happens at times, that it's implied that the individual is now intelligent, rather than just intelligence is working, and it's not that individual.
I don't know about individuals, sir. The word individual means an entity who is not divided. The meaning of that, indivisible. Then he is only an individual. But we are so fragmented, so broken up, so distorted, We may call ourselves individuals, but we are not. But that's irrelevant. So the first then thing is to eliminate conflict, which is a wastage of time, wastage of energy. And to eliminate that wastage is to realize the observer is the observed. The Arab is the Jew. The Hindu is the Muslim, only in name, you follow? It's so silly.
What's much more difficult to realize, the conditioning is the
That's right, sir. So much more difficult to realize our conditioning. Our conditioning is to live in the past. Right? Our life is based on past memories, past hurts, past anxieties. Everything is somewhere behind us. That's our life. And we don't see, when we live in the past, we can never understand what is going on inwardly. So, unless one realizes the observer is the observed, the thinker is the thought, or the experiencer is the experience, there is no freedom from conflict. The gods and one worships is surely put together by thought, isn't it? Huh? But the man who says no, it is God, you can't argue with him. You can't even open the door. He's firmly part of the tradition and bound by his condition. But those who say, all right, I'm inquiring, going into it, then one has a communication with them, which is to observe, to see that the observer is the observed, and so end conflict. Ending of conflict means freedom. Freedom, in that freedom, is intelligence. You understand? Because I've seen the observer is the observed, which is intelligence, to see that. And that intelligence is part of this freedom, isn't it? So there must, to have this silent mind, which is necessary if one is serious, to find out if there is anything totally uncontaminated by thought and humanity. All the religions have said there is. And the priests have, all over the world, have said, we are the interpreters of that. And that's the market value and so on. So if you discard all that, really discard, because your intelligence says that's all too absurd, then your mind is completely still. Is it still now? Or are you still chattering? Once it's for you to answer. If it is not still, then find out why it is not quiet. Spend some time, energy, not how to make it still. That becomes too absurdly childish. Find out why it isn't still. Inquire, you understand? Because you are attached to a shoe and what you're going to do tomorrow, or oh, I have dinner, I have this, I have that, I must do that, I must read, I must do my exercise. You follow? Chattering. Now, the chattering is part of the thought, part of the chatter, isn't it? The one who chatters is the entity that says, yes, I am chattering. They are not separate. The chattering and the entity who says I am different, that the entity who says I am different is actually the chatterer. Now if you see that, actually see it, then you can't do it, it's finished. Then there is no conflict not to chatter. Unless you come to that point, which is to be free, and therefore the operation of intelligence going with it, then only you will have a quiet, healthy, sane mind. And in that quietness you will find out if there is something really sacred or nothing at all. I think that's enough, isn't it, for today? No, not for today, till next year. May I go now?